Karibu sana to the CM Advocates LLP podcast. And here I'm joined by panelists who are different professionals, and they're here to talk about or to share their views on the the agreement that was signed back in April 2025 between Kenya and China, and basically just giving their views from ordinary citizen of what the China-Kenya trade relationship portends. So from my left, I'm joined by...
So my name is Susan Mwango. I am an advocate. I practice at CM Advocates, and I'm very happy to join this panelist in this very timely discussion on what we expect from the agreements that were signed, marking the bilateral relationships between Kenya and China.
Good evening. My name is Steve Juma, political analyst. I'm here to discuss the bilateral agreement that was signed back in 2013, 2025, April by Kenyan and China. We want to look at the transparency of this agreement. We want to look at the policies that are in place. We want to look at issues like feasibility studies that was there. We want to look at the benefit of common mwananchi, how it's going to benefit. We want to look at if the trade is balanced to our destiny, our goal, our objective, our mission as a country, so that we can be able to achieve development, sustainability in terms of infrastructure, in terms of business, in terms of changing life, in terms of living standard of normal Kenyan. And we do agree that the bilateral agreement has played a major role in terms of development of our country. But, however, there's some small issues that we need to look at so that we can make it better for now and the future.
Thank you so much for this great opportunity. My name is Timothy Ombachi, Business Development Strategy Expert, Data Protection, Cybersecurity at CM Advocates. And it's a great opportunity to be able to discuss this very pertinent issue that is affecting our country. We look forward for a very insightful, for a very engaging discussion as we are able to unpack this particular trade relation. It's crystal clear that it has come with immense benefit, but looking at an overview of it, let us look at the economic impact it has, in environmental impact, social impact. Let us look at the benefits. Let us look at the challenges, solutions, and how we can be able to ensure that this particular trade relation is strengthened for the transformation of the country. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stella. My name is Joash Mugambi. I'm a registered and practicing valuer at the Property Boutique. It's a real estate firm located Upper Hill, I&M, Upper Hill, 5th floor. On the onset, the relationship between China and Kenya in terms of trade, in terms of programs which are beneficial to each country, to the country, I'll say it's healthy. The trade is good, despite Kenya having lesser volumes of trade to China than China. China being a super world, the balance is leaning towards Kenya. So what I can say, any trade, any business, any relationship, for me, is a plus between the two countries, especially for us, a growing economy.
How we conceptualized this discussion, it was born out of an article I was doing, just giving my views as a lawyer on what the myriad of agreements that constitute the agreement between China and Kenya entail. And just wanted to seek the views of other Kenyans who may not be advocates, though we have an advocate here, so she will give her views on what comes to mind when they hear China-Kenya trade relations. And allow me to start with the lady on my left to just give us her views on what comes to mind when you hear Kenya and China trade relations.
I think, of course, to give credit to the relationship between China and Kenya, because it is from that relationship that a lot of our infrastructure here has been developed. I think you cannot mention the Thika Superhighway without thinking about the impact that the China-Kenya relationship has had. So I think for the most part, and from outsiders, from a majority of Kenyans looking in, we cannot underestimate the impact of the China-Kenya relationship, because we mentioned a majority of the roads that we have and a majority of the projects, including the very famous standard gauge railways, has come to being because of that relationship between China and Kenya.
Thank you, Susan. You underscore the importance of China to our infrastructural development. But let me bring in Steve. Steve, what do you think, or what comes to mind when you hear about China-Kenya trade relations?
When we hear about Kenya-China trade relations, you try to think of more of development. We must accept the fact that Kenya is a third world country, and we need our support. We need partnership. We need our friends to come and support us, develop good infrastructure, good education systems, good hospitals, good roads to our country, so that we can be able to grow economically. You only grow economically when you expand roads and all that. And actually, China's are there to support countries like a third world country like Kenya to move into that direction. However, much has been emphasized. We need to review the policies there that push for that trade, because we need a win-win situation whereby Kenya has 50%, and then China has got 50%. Currently is a good thing, but it does not have that 50-50 or win-win situation outlook. I do think that China takes more from us in terms of ratio than what we expect. We expect that in the near future, if you review the policies that are there, and we ask to our members of parliament, the legislature, to look at that, so that we can be able to have that win-win situation, so that we can be able to have much impact compared to what we're having now as a country. So I call for the review of the policies that was put in place, so that we can look at it once again. But however, it's very important for us to have China with us.
Thank you, Steve. When it comes to the 50-50 and the need to review policies, as we said, we have the agreement, and under it we have myriad other agreements.
Yeah.
So, Tim, what do you have to say about the trade balance between China and Kenya?
Okay. Thank you once again, Stella, for this opportunity. When I look at the trade balance, it is crystal clear, like the tropical blue sky, that there's a lot of trade deficit. Trade deficit, I look at it in terms of the statistics. Kenya today imports about 450 billion from China. And whereas we look at the export is about mere 20 billion. So there's a very great trade deficit that we need to address. And you see, when there's that trade deficit, it causes us to have challenges in terms of our foreign exchange reserves. And when we have challenges in terms of our foreign exchange reserves, then it will bring a lot of challenges as far as our economy is concerned. And when I also look at that also, I'll also look at the aspect in terms of when you look at the projects that are being undertaken, majority of them, the products, maybe the material used, mostly come from China. So what are we doing in terms of our own local industries that are there? Again, it has brought a bit of benefits as well. We've seen people being able to access rather affordable products from the China market. It actually has borne entrepreneurship, because if you look at the business people, whether in 𝐥𝐤𝐵, when you look at them in Kamukunji, it has brought a whole set of entrepreneurship. But again, but again, that also puts pressure in terms of our own local industries. So in terms of, yes, we are getting these products, but at the expense of us stifling our own local industries. And once we are not able to run our local industry, you see the issue of unemployment will always keep going up. I'll also look at it in terms of the way the whole labor relation has been. In terms of the labor relation, we've actually seen a lot of serious human rights violation, especially in terms of how people working in some of these projects have been treated, which I believe they should be done better. We've actually seen it on camera, on video, people being flogged and stripped of their dignity and humanity. So it's something that actually needs to be addressed. So even as we are doing business with them, I actually look at it also in terms of the procurement issues. There's been no transparency in terms of how the procurement process has been. We don't know how, there's been no oversight. Have we allowed maybe our local contractors to tender in some of these projects? Because on some of the projects, we may have the capacity here, but we are directly getting from them. So in terms of oversight and in terms of public participation as well, because this particular relation will have economic impact. If we are not able to meet our debt obligation, for example, as a country, then it's going to, the government will be forced to increase taxes. Taxes will mean the prices of the commodity in the country are going to go up. So the common man is going to suffer. So in terms of reviewing it, I look at it in the aspect of mostly the debt is structured in terms of the dollar. So why can't we, maybe the government needs to renegotiate in terms of us having yuan Kenya shilling, so that we also don't put pressure in terms of our foreign exchange. So I look at it in that aspect. But again, it has also brought employment opportunities for people who are working within these particular mega projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Tim have brought out so many points, some positive, some which show that there's room for improvement. But allow me to bring in Joash. What is your view of the Kenya-Chinese trade relations, and is it all that bad, or there's good in it?
Thank you, Stella. My view about the relationship of Kenya and China, the trade relationship, it is very significant or cordial in terms of trade, in terms of capital, and in terms of machinery. Kenya stands to gain a lot from the trade, especially in the infrastructural projects, be it dams, be it transmission lines, that's projects in the energy sector, projects in the water sector, projects in roads. Kenya has and will always remain a beneficiary of the relationship. A huge benefit comes from China to Kenya. Looking at it from the economic aspect, China is strong in terms of its money, what we call liquid. China has huge banks. The currency is strong as compared to our shilling. So, as Kenyans, common mwananchi, we stand a chance of making strides in economic growth. Social aspect, yes, China, when it's carrying out its projects, like the standard gauge railway, like the energy infrastructure, those individual corporate companies, when they are constructing, they have extended they have a program called Social Corporate Responsibilities. They have assisted communities along the project areas. SGR, the towns in all the way to Mombasa, they gained a lot. Environmentally, yes, they also undertake huge environmental conservations, like the standard gauge from 𝐿𝐥𝐤𝐤𝐞 going all the way to Suswa. They have built an underground tunnel, which is 4 kilometers. And they have saved, life is up there, life is continuing, but they have decided the tunnel, the SGR, goes 4 kilometers. That's the first, then from Ngong to Kimuka. Then there's another one from Nachu all the way to Suswa, down to Suswa. It's also 4 kilometers. China, when they are doing the projects, they are environmentally sensitive. And they have always taken into consideration of the environment in Kenya. Therefore, as a country, Kenya gains a lot. Also, there is even China is also gaining in terms of exchange program. They bring in the experts. The Kenyan experts also gain. So, in my personal opinion, it's a very healthy relationship.
Thank you, Joash. Joash says, in his opinion, it's a very healthy relationship. And we will pack that and come back to it later on. But allow me to bring in Steve. Steve, I know you have a lot of interest in politics.
Politics. Yeah.
What is the political impact, again, with the common mwananchi in mind, of the Kenya-Chinese trade relations?
It has got political interest, both internationally and local politics. Both internationally, you see the Americans, which is the West, they're always trying to fight a country that kneel toward the East because of supremacy, power. You find the West will always fight too strongly. That is the national factors. Why we are leaning to the East, they always want you to go to them and ask for the support or all that, or when you have a need as a country. But you see, the West, they have got a supremacy that whereby they cannot allow just to move like that. You must have to ask for permission from them. That is international politics. And you see, the West has got a lot of bureaucracy. For you to give you a support, they'll give you a very long documentary to sign the policy and all that. While if you go to the East, the China will just ask you, do you have a land? We give you the money, you go and build the hospital. You have money, we build the roads. They consider a little part of interest when you're returning that money and all that. So they always give back to the country that is struggling, like Kenya and other countries, the third countries and all that. While now local politics comes in whereby you find the government, these are the support from China, but the government of the day want to utilize in the perceived areas that support the government of the day. That affects the local politics. Yeah. You find that if now you want to build a road, you look at where do you want to puncture this road where it was, you got your support from. That's a local politics. In other words, this kind of development should be perceived equally, despite of the region where it voted for the government, which is the government and all that. Because the Chinese, when they're giving the support, they're giving support to Kenyans. They're not giving support to regions where it voted for or not voted for the government and all that. So we can still do much with the support we're getting from China if we do away with the local politics that affect our countries in every day. You know, good politics, the stability of economy, sustainability, and development for the future. Bad politics, the divisive politics, even scared the investors and make investors run away. So I always want to, in my opinion as a politician and somebody who aspires to be a member of parliament, once we stick to the policies, then the local politics will not be able to play a role on development. Every corners, every areas in this country will be able to receive development from our investors. Because when the investors come, they know they're coming to serve Kenyans. They know they're coming to serve each and every part of Kenyans. But they're not going to serve individual, the interests of the politician. But because of greed, because of our corrupt nature, or our ways of doing politics, we're trying to interfere with the support and the gain that we get from our development partners. So I'll urge the government of the day, every politician, to take the interest of normal mwananchi at stake at 100%, so that the sustainability, the growth and development of the whatever resources that we receive from outside should be able to change our country for the better and the future for society.
Thank you, Steve. You said because of our corrupt nature, though I don't believe all of us have a corrupt nature, but that's a discussion for another time. So, as you put it clearly, that when investors are giving whatever support to a country, they're not giving it to go to a particular region or to particular persons, they're giving it to the country in a wholesome manner. And so you question our policies, our institutional framework. So I want to pose this question to Susan, being a lawyer. Yes, we have the agreements, but these agreements are being drafted by other professionals. And we've had people say, when you get loans from the Chinese, they will come and take your airports and your key infrastructure. What should we do, for example, as lawyers engaged in now putting the finer details of these agreements on paper? What should we do? What are some of the things we should do to safeguard these, our sovereignty, for example, our human rights for the people who are involved in these projects?
Thank you, Stella. I think what we should do, first of all, to your question that there are other professionals other than lawyers who are drafting these agreements, I think that should not be the case, because ideally, lawyers have put in the work. They've been in their professional and in their academic work to make sure that that they get the drafting part of the agreements right. So I think that work and the work of drafting should be left to them. They can, of course, always collaborate with other professionals, because when you're looking at certain these trade agreements, we're also looking to see the contribution of maybe political analysts. We're also looking to see the contribution of financial analysts. They could be there supporting the draft itself, but I think that should be done with the forefronter being the advocates. So to that point, that's what I would say. To the question of what should you do in order to protect ourselves, the finer details, the finer print of the agreement, I'd hope that it has provisions for human rights provisions. How do you safeguard the laborers that are involved in the various projects? How are their rights taken into account while drafting? And what are the consequences that are going to follow if these rights are violated? Of course, also including indemnity provisions. So I would expect that there will be a lot of that in the agreements, just human rights provisions, environmental safeguards. Within the project, after we have dug out the earth, that hubris that is left, who is in charge of taking care of it? Are those fine details imprinted into the agreement? What happens in a case, who do we find liable when that hubris, where that waste is left unattended to, is left on site? And as a result, other third parties and Kenyans, of course, because they're the ones who are living in this country, get harmed by such environmental waste. So we are looking to, and we are hopefully that these are some of the provisions that are embedded in this agreement as part of safeguarding, of course, the environment, safeguarding the people of Kenya, so that as we are talking about a win-win relationship, that is the win that we would be hoping is achieved for the people of this country.
I want to add something, Stella. Mm-hmm. I think what we need to look at, I need to look at three things: public's participation, transparency, and then feasibility study. When the three things are put in place, then we'll be asking questions: how, when, who, where. so that we know who matter, who need to be involved, where the place, when, how. So we know everything is put openly. There was rumors few months ago when Linturi, the former speaker, was leaving the office as Attorney General.
Yeah.
And his first interview was trying to say that there's a time he was leaving Delhi in India and he was supposed to go to Dubai straight. And then he received a call from the president, and the president was asking him to sign a collateral deal on the airport. And he was insisting that this is a deal that I need to go through. There's no public participation. I need to sit my office, whether it was a rumor or whatever. But we cannot ignore such cases do happen in Kenya, where you're called into our office, sign, put your signature, and it become a deal. If we do the public participation, if we do feasibility study, and then it's transparent, then we'll be able to get the win-win situation in our side. And then we'll be able to know who comes in, what is required. We'll even to know how much we need to pay or terms of debt after a certain period of years and all that, because everything is transparent. Everything is on the table. And that's the area that we are lacking. And that's where the roots of corruption now get in, because it's just nobody's aware of what's going on. There's no feasibility study. There's no transparency. Things are signed on a boardroom and then become a law, become a policy, and then the money is transferred, the projects begins and all that. If we decided to be focused on three things: transparency, feasibility study, and then we'll be able to achieve what you want to achieve with these projects.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think in addition to what 𝐶𝐶𝐵𝐺𝐻 said, 𝐶𝐶𝐵𝐺𝐻 has actually raised a very serious, pertinent issue that speaks to governance. If there's clarity in terms of how these issues are done, then we can even be able to involve even the common man here, especially like we talk about what opportunities are there today in China, even for like the small, medium enterprises, for the people who are producing different kinds of tools, even in the local, rural areas. In terms of the environment, have we been able to see this sustainability or assessment reports in terms of maybe the way the waste disposal has there been a proper structure to it? We are doing evacuation as we try to get this material. Do we have clarity on that? In terms of getting into access to this market, how can we be able to expand maybe then our export market? Is there clarity on issues on matters of tariff? If there are small medium enterprises that are qualified to export to that market, why can't we have an agreement where they export duty free to this market and we give them the support in terms of the things maybe that we can be able to produce locally? For example, we don't need to get toothpicks from China. There's need for us to have sort of a partnership where also people from that area ensure that there's capacity building. There's exchange programs. There are people from this country who can go there, learn about the technology. In terms of coming together, having industrial zones, it will help us to expand all our economic matters also, and will create more employment so that we can be able to leverage on that. But as he said, in matters of transparency, in matters of accountability and oversight, I think that will greatly help.
Thank you, Timothy. Let me just stick with you for a minute. There's in Swahili we say tetesi. So I don't know. Tetesi should be like rumor.
Rumors, yes.
That there's a lot of consumerism.
Yes.
Because of the imbalance in trade.
Yes.
So that in Kenya we are consuming a lot, and it has an impact on our sustainability.
Yes.
What do you have to say about that in terms of these trade relations?
Thank you. What you're saying, well, it is crystal clear that there's actually, we have been actually turned more of consumers than producers. That's as pointed out now. We are getting the toothpicks from China. And you see, this is the expense at our local industry that are being stifled. And we cannot be able to sustain our local industry. It means there are a lot of people who are losing employment, their source of livelihood. So we need to put proper structures, which again goes back to the issue of accountability in terms of what can be produced locally, let it be produced locally. So let us get maybe resources or products from China that we cannot be able to produce locally, and also have a partnership where they're not, so that we don't turn into a dumping zone. Because the perception that is there is that we've been turned solely into a dumping zone. And that's a stifle even our own. Look at how even our textile industry is now. Our we have very great textile material. If you compare the products we produce like in Athi River and all those EPZs, they have great quality. But majority of the the products we have here, I think I won't be shocked that majority of us, what we are wearing today is China made, at the expense of our own textile industry. Because if we are not being able to protect our own local industry, we will not have revival of things like cotton that will also benefit farmers, so that we can be able to supply to this particular zone. So for things that we can be able to produce locally, let us produce locally. In terms of the matters procurement, let the matters procurement be clear enough so that if we have local companies here that have capacity, they can be able to bid, if they can be able to do the work, let them do the work. Because and then again, in terms of also the relation, also in terms of there's then perception that maybe as a country we may not have competency enough. I think majority of the time what we lack maybe is finances and expertise and a bit of technology, but we have great expertise as a country as well. So we look at it in terms of partnership rather than them just bringing everything. We can also partner. If in terms of procurement, some of the things can be procured locally, we don't need to source from there, so that we can be able to close that gap. But in terms of then the trade deficit, then we have to look at the ease of doing business, reduce the tariffs so that we can be able to get into that market, train people, have these exchange programs. We can have maybe AI incubation and startup as we bring the technology here. So we can have all of those exchange programs. We can be able to get people maybe on scholarship and go and run there, and then we are able to transfer that knowledge in terms of so that there's a bit of knowledge sharing.
Again, to add on that, I think also it touched the governance, because the policies are there, how to do the collateral trades, how to get partnerships and all that. But then if you go to those agreements, a weak partner, you will not be able to achieve much. You become more consumer than exporter. So at the end of the day, it touched the governance. Understand Liberia, the new president,
Yes,
had cleared his debt within 6 months, because it puts it openly to the public that this is what we have, this is what we owe, and this is what we can be able to settle our debts. I remember the other day in Kenya, the court cleared that let the government give us how much in terms of debt. Let everything be put on the table, so that we know how much we owe our partners, how much we need to pay. Until to date, this is 2 years down the line, nothing has been done, because it touched the governance. If they want us to, they don't want us to know how much. They don't want to know what are the policies that are there, what are the agreements that are being put in place, who are involved. And that's called for even in the near future, because the law allows us to go to Kenya, to go to court to say, okay, we did not consume what we are being told to pay. We are not privy to this agreement, and therefore we cannot be taxed for this money. So I think we'll be able to go to that direction. So me, I'm urging the governor, the leaders, our leaders, so that these things should be open, they should be transparent, so that we can also be able to look at these policies, whereby if as he's put it, if there's something that we can manufacture locally as Kenyan, why should we be able to export them? Sometimes we bring them because we are desperate, looking for money. We go to those negotiations as weak partners, and therefore we become a dumping site. So just take whatever you're given and you will accept. So then all of these things sometimes touch the governance. If you have a strong leader who value the people, who value the transparency, who value the law, and you value the policy, then we'll be able to get a win-win situation.
Absolutely.
Even if it's win-win situation, 40-60, or maybe 50-40, not 30-70. I think that will not be able to move us as a country if you want to develop. If you don't have a strong bargaining power, we don't value the policy, we don't value transparency, we don't value feasibility study. These have to be put in place for us to move as a country.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Steve. I will bring in Joash, but before I bring in Joash, I want Susan to comment on this. You have said that we should not go into that negotiation table as a weak party. And previous agreements had the dispute resolution clause saying that the seat of that dispute will be in China. And so it means wherever there's a dispute in any of these agreements, then we as Kenyans have to go to China to resolve that. If you're now given these overarching agreements and told to concretize them into now the smaller, the fine print, how would you craft the dispute resolution clause?
Thank you, Stella. And I think Sibora on this panel has mentioned a very important thing, that anytime you're negotiating an agreement, of course, there's that thing that's called leverage. And because of its GDP compared to our GDP, you'd say China, of course, has the higher leverage. So how do you go into negotiation with such a partner? How do you get in? Because of that kind of disparity, how do you ensure that you get fair terms? Yeah. So in terms of leverage, you can say, we're also looking at China has come here for a reason. So there's something that they want to benefit from Kenya. And that should be our leveraging point, that how much do you want this thing? And what concessions, what reciprocity are you willing to give us as Kenya, even though our GDP, in terms of trading partners, we are so far behind you? What concessions are you also willing to give to us as Kenyans? So specifically to come to that point on dispute resolution, of course, the dispute resolution clause makes that disparity very obvious, because if you're China and Kenya, and the dispute resolution clause is stating that this dispute will be arbitrated or will be litigated in China, from there it's just obvious who has the higher leverage. So what can we do to make it fair? I think that would be the question. Why not have a neutral jurisdiction where the dispute is going to be resolved? Why? Because that also makes both parties feel at par within the agreement. So let us look. You're from China, I'm from Kenya. Where do both of us consider would be a neutral ground for us to go and have a dispute resolved should there be an issue concerning this agreement? So in terms of phrasing the dispute resolution clause, I would advise for that kind of neutrality for many reasons, but obvious one is so that no party feels they are inferior. Because of course, when you talk about sovereignty, all parties are sovereign. Kenya is sovereign, China is sovereign, so that sovereignty should be shown even in these small ways, in incorporating a dispute resolution clause that is neutral to both parties in terms of the jurisdiction and the law that's going to be used to determine the disputes within that agreement.
Thank you, Susan. Let me bring in Joash, because Joash is a strong proponent for the Kenya-China trade relations. He sees the glass half full when some of the panelists here see it half empty. Joash, in terms of these trade deals, and I know some of those they were signing were very heavy on skill transfer. You have interacted with some of these projects that are being done by the Chinese government and entities. What benefit has accrued to us in terms of skill transfer so far?
Okay, thanks, Tara, and my fellow panelists. I'm looking at those agreements in two forms. There are agreements which are signed or trade which occurs government to government. Mega projects done by the government of Kenya through various ministries. Energy projects, they are done by Ministry of Energy. We have experts there. Kenya is very well endowed with experts. We have engineers who go through those agreements. They sift through. Before an agreement is signed, even the engineers visit China, they are taking a whole month orientation to learn if it's transmission lines. They go to China China has the greatest transmission lines in terms of build capacity. They go there, they study exchange program. The experts from China come here also, they orient, they do that. This is, I experienced when I was doing the energy transmission lines. It's not one day work. Then once these projects start, it is the line ministry which does public participation, which does the SCRs, environmental, social impact assessments. It's not the company which is building the transmission line. It's Kenya government, the experts who are in that ministry. Then the second one, if it's water, the same with the Ministry of Water for dams, construction of dams. The experts in the ministry are the ones who control these agreements. Then there's nowadays what we call private partnerships agreements. That one is either government or the company coming from China enters into a private agreement with a private entity. The benefits are both spelled out. If it's a road they are going to construct, or they are going to do an off-grid power station with an individual, they will enter into that agreement. They will agree on a proportion of 60-70 or 60-40. Then we have, nowadays under the private partnerships, we have what we call joint ventures. They are very common in our company, in the property boutique. Chinese companies come, you give them land is always available, buildable land, good land, legally. They build, you share 30-70. So the benefits are there. It's immense. The issues of public participation is enshrined in our constitution, Article 10. Any project, if it's a government project you are doing, you have to sensitize your people, you have to tell the members of the public what you are going to do, what will be the benefits of that project. And about private, it's a bit new, private partnerships. It's a bit new. We have only seen the MAU. That is the one which is going to be run by private, even expressway. That was built through private partnerships. You build, you pay to use the road.
Thank you, Josh. So from this discussion, what I'm getting is that for the common wananchi,
Yes.
they may not understand exactly what is in the fine print of these agreements. And so they require us who've gone to school, and as we keep on saying in this podcast, the village took us to school not to hold that the skills and the information, but to come and disseminate and break down that information to the village in a manner in which they understand. So what I'm getting is that we as professionals need to talk about what is happening and break down this information to these people in a way that they understand and explain to them what the impact is. But beyond that, we have talked about maybe our policies, the need for revising our policies, the fact that issues of public participation are there in the law, and so points out to a breakdown somewhere when you're looking at this China-Kenya relations. And where is the problem then?
Okay, thank you, Stella. The problem comes during implementation or construction. Mm-hmm. At the initial stage, at the first stage of project conceptualization, there's no problem. Mm-hmm. The problem comes physically, watu anasema kwa ground. Mm-hmm. That's when the problem comes. Mm-hmm. But before then, it is very smooth. I was involved in a transmission line from Mombasa to Lamu. What we were doing, after the signing of the contract by the Chinese company under the Ministry of Energy, the project was to a tune of 4 billion. That's a huge project, transmission line, opening up the coast region to the national grid. When you start by organizing public barazas, telling the benefits, shouting every day, day in, for 3 months, covering from Rabai to Lamu, explaining to people. Problem comes the day the groundbreaking, the launch of now the Chinese. He wants to displace people. He wants to access the corridor. If you have not provided the corridor in good time, people will start quarreling, they will start resisting. Resistance comes during construction. That's now when huyu mchina ameharibu nyumba yangu na sijalipwa. Huyu mchina sijakuwa compensated. That's when the problem comes. It can even stall the project. Same with water, with dams. So the problem comes when actual construction. Thika Road, we had a lot of problems because some of the people, the project affected persons, don't attend those barazas. For them to be sensitive, for them to ask questions, for them to be told what is the benefit of the road. Some of these projects are public good. Yes, they must be done. They are not like joint ventures. Yes. So the problem comes in during construction, and then there's this general feeling that the Chinas have taken over Kenya. It's a general feeling of the public. But let me tell you, there's nothing. Roads are designed by Kenyan engineers. All these interchanges, Kura, Kenya, Urban Roads Board, engineers, they have experts. The China is just a contractor who comes to construct and they go back.
I think there's something that you're running away from. I talk of 3 things: transparency, feasibility study, and accountability. Yeah. I was involved in, when I was doing my master's degree in 2014 in project planning and management, I was, I think, attached to when the 𝐿𝐤𝐤𝐤 road was being built by the Japanese firm, I think, 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐤𝐞, yes. The Japanese corporation.
Yes.
So I was attached to engineer 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐞. I don't know where he went, because that's where I did my attachment on that project. There's no transparency when these people are to be compensated. Absolutely. People are running garage around 𝐿𝐤𝐤𝐤 road. Although there was a lot of garages. If you're coming from Westland, 𝐿𝐤𝐤𝐤 going to Yaya, because that road was to be expanded all the way to the airport from the other sides of Kibra. And when it reached somewhere in Makina, Kibaki to stop it somewhere at Yaya, so that they negotiate with the politicians who are by then, so that they can proceed. But what brought the problem, the money was released by the Chinese firm earlier, enough to be people to be compensated. Yeah. But because of the transparency and accountability, somebody wanted to sweep this money away. So that brings a lot of problem. Because I don't think Kenyans are bad people that they keep on fighting every project. If there's accountability, there's transparency and all that. But you always find that when the money has been released, the problem comes when now there's people being compensated. That's where the problems begin. The real owners, they are not going to be compensated. People who pretend to be ghost owners will always get compensated. And that lack of transparency bring a lot of problems at that particular time. And that's why now, because the Chinese are people, if you say they come to help us build the economy, build roads and all that, they also follow the law at some point. If they are told this is the money that you need to compensate it, they always remove that money. I don't think the Chinese can fail to give out that money. But that's where the problems begin. When now there's no accountability, transparency, and other things. Public participation has swept under the carpet. You come and call people just for baraza for the sake of doing public participation. By the time of compensation, you are nowhere to be seen, and the conflicts begin. If they can be able to, that governance, if you can be able to work on that, then there's problems you can be able to reduce.
Thank you.
Okay. To add on top of that, when, let's take a road, the one here said, or Ngong Road. Ngong Road, during expansion, a drawing of the road, the corridor is in existence. The Chinese company has won a tender. The Chinese would come to the office. Ngong Road is one of the roads done by Kura. What the Chinese, once he has signed the tender, or he has won the tender because it's done the national bids, he goes to Kura. Kura has all the requirements of that road. They are going to expand, they are going to build an interchange. There was no compensation in terms of people owning land. The compensation which is there is determined by the agency which is expanding the road. Then it runs in two types. The traders who have been trading on government reserve, those ones will never be compensated as the owners of the land. You find, like Ngong, the upper part of Ngong towards Karen, there were people who were selling chuakali. The chuakali, in fact, they had an association. They were on the corridor. Those ones, the government, through the Ministry of Social Services, decided to buy land to relocate them. No, not from the construction money, from different sources, out of goodwill of the government. And the compensation was, they buy land, they give you a similar space you occupy. Not to, where would the government get money to compensate somebody who is on your corridor? You know, if you trade on the roadside,
on road reserve,
you are trespassing. The same way with Kangemi, the expansion of 𝐥𝐤𝐤𝐞 Road.
Yeah.
They were, and the government made a decision. The Ministry of Trade made a decision. Because these are hawkers, you give a uniform money, 10,000. Then once you start today, tomorrow you will find people have built structures on the land. So the Interior, the Minister of Interior, could assist us identifying the people, the genuine hawkers. People want to be compensated. The same way with SGR in Mombasa, the fishing units, management units. People want to be compensated because the road, the Dongokundu Road, is now going to be built over the sea. It's going to disrupt the fishing.
Logical.
And those are the people who bring a lot of pressure.
What I'm getting, when we look at the Kenya-Chinese trade relations, we have what you say, the government to government.
Yes.
And then we have the private trade deal.
Yes.
And so the government to government has the challenges that we've spoken about, but we keep on forgetting about the private. If your team today went and bought merchandise from China to come and sell it in Kenya,
yes,
you're definitely contributing to the either trade balance or imbalance.
Yes.
And that's where I want us to focus a bit.
Okay.
Do you think it's sustainable? And what can we do in terms of, because you go to get merchandise from China to come and sell it to us because there's a market.
Yes.
Because the consumer wants that and they are willing to pay for it. But isn't there a problem in terms of how we understand that and the consumerism?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. You see, in terms of that, we need to ask ourselves this key fundamental issues. Why is it that we are importing from China as opposed to producing locally? It is because when you look at the cost of production in the country, the government has not done enough in terms of ensuring that the cost of production is is low in terms of electricity, in terms of like labor. So what we need to do, if we need to be able to ensure that balance, the government also needs to do a lot in terms of ensuring that we build capacity within the local industries that are within the country. That would be a sustainable way for us to be able to protect our local industry. So it reduces the cost of production. You see, generally, most products generally around the world now are coming from China, because even today, even the US market is still worried about China. Why? Because the cost of production in China is low. So we have to find ways in ensuring that the cost of production in Kenya is low. The ease of doing business in terms of even our taxation regime to these people, so that the cost of doing business is low. Once we ensure that is there and we have the expertise, then we can be able to produce cheaply locally, so that we can not be able to import products from that market, because it normally brought about the issue of cost. So that we can move, we have to develop our industry locally here, the expertise. So the government needs to invest a lot, and also work within the financial institution, so that there is access maybe to capital for people who are doing local manufacturing, so that they have capacity building in ensuring that they can be able to produce locally, cheaply. And also, again, with the trade agreement, then we can talk about even knowledge and technological transfer, so that you can be able to produce cheaply locally.
Thank you, Tim. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a discussion that is not coming to an end soon. So we will have many more of these and bring in other experts to weigh in on the issue. Our intention is to ultimately get to a point where the trade relations between Kenya and China are working for both parties. Say a win-win situation. But even beyond the trade relations, we want other relations also to work in a way that every country is winning. So allow me to take your last comments on this, just briefly, a minute or so. Let's start with Tim.
Thank you. So I think there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of ensuring there's that trade balance. We need to ensure that we've enhanced local capacity. We need to negotiate to have knowledge transfer. We need to have a cultural exchange. As we are going through this trade relation, let's also promote our tourism, so that we have people coming from China to visit the wonderful, beautiful wonders of nature that we have in the country. We can also gain a lot in terms of our economy, in terms of them coming and using our facilities here. Our economy can be able to grow. Let there be issues of accountability and transparency. Everything is done clearly, so that in terms of, before we even get into agreement, in as much as you said there are no challenge in terms of conceptualizing this matter, some of the issues that you've raised here, it is crystal clear that there are issues that we'll have addressed during the conceptualization. If there was accountability and clarity on this issue, we'll have reviewed this agreement, whether we need to get it, or we can also go to other development partners that will bring. So let there be issues of clear transparency, and let us also involve the local in terms of, if there are market opportunities within that market, let's involve even the small, medium enterprises, so that the common man can be able to be able to have benefit of this, and also restructure the debt as I proposed. Rather than us paying in dollars, we can have a China yuan, Kenya shilling kind of agreement, so that will reduce that pressure, and of course it will improve the economy. Thank you.
I'm looking at, if the objective is to empower the normal mwananchi, as someone who inspired to become the Kibra MP, this is the most populated place in the city, with the majority of the young people who don't have a job. And if the objective of this bilateral agreement is to empower the young normal mwananchi to get a job, to change their living standard, I will really appreciate that. I'm looking at a situation whereby in the future I become a member of parliament. Even now, many young people can get job opportunity from this trade agreement. It should be transparency, accountability. The feasibility study should be done to absorb these young people to get a job on this project that we are doing in Kenya. Because these projects are there to change the life of Kenyans, not life of any other, but life of Kenyans. So that if Kibra is the most, for example, our neighbors here, is the most populated with young people don't have a job, we feel that if they are building roads, like we're building the Talanta Stadium, I should be able to expect to see 30,000 young people from the neighborhood joining that sector and doing good job and changing their life also in terms of stability, living standard and all that. So it's good. Let's look at, review it, look at the issues that are there, policy, transparency, accountability, feasibility study, the experts brought on board, and create more impact to our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Stella. For me, I will ask for more information, exchange of information, and contract for any project. Let people be made aware, wahamasishwe, na wao waulize maswali, how they are going to benefit. Then let us have more of training before and after. Let us have more companies being maintenance companies. What is killing us is once a road has been built, it goes to waste within 4 months or within a year. Let us have Kenyan companies being formed to maintain those roads. Now, once the Chinese have built, have conceptualized and have completed the project, let now have more companies so that they can employ and they can offer continuous employment. And then during construction, during these projects, the facilities which are left behind, let them be converted to heritage centers so that they can open up those remote areas. So that if it's building a road to Mutogashe all the way to Wachia, and those facilities along the road, let them be turned into schools, social amenities to help the community at that ground, at that level, and provide employment. Yes, more cooperation, more trade.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think for me, as a parting shot, will be to say, of course, anytime you hear about agreements, you expect that there's going to be fairness that is documented and crystallized in these agreements. So at the top of your mind, when you hear about an agreement, it's not very far-fetched for the word fairness to come to mind. So with that, I'd say, in as much as in terms of GDP, China is a much bigger GDP than ours. The agreements should mirror a level of fairness, so that if you're saying in terms of trade deficit, the trade deficit is very high, how do these agreements, what clauses are in place to ensure that we try to reduce that trade gap that makes the imbalance between exports and imports within China and Kenya. So as a parting shot, I would say that let us try, or the negotiating parties or the parties that are negotiating these agreements on behalf of Kenya, let them try to set provisions that are going to be fair to mwananchi. Yes, that would be the partition. Fair to the country, fair to mwananchi.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for gracing this panel and sharing your views on the Kenya-China trade relations and the agreement that was signed back in April 2025. We have done an article, as I said, when we began this podcast. It was to move us away from the article where I was talking about, as a lawyer, what should be contained in the fine print, to getting the views of the ordinary Kenyan on what China-Kenya trade relations portend. Keep it here. We will link this article for those who are interested in reading it. But then we will also have and continue to have this discussion. As we said, we go to school. We are taken to school by the village so that we can come back and tell the village this is what these very complex agreements mean. Until next time, please keep it here. Patronize our social media sites on LinkedIn, X, and Instagram, where we share legal insights that help you craft real-time solutions to your day-to-day problems. Thank you.